FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Today's show is brought to you by U.S. Gold Corp. U.S. Gold Corp is a U.S.-focused gold exploration and development company advancing high-potential projects in Wyoming and Nevada. U.S. Gold Corp has consolidated a district on Nevada's productive Cortex trend and is advancing the Copper King project towards production in Wyoming, led by a team of prolific company builders and renowned explorers, including Dave Mathewson, who is directly responsible for several major Nevada gold discoveries. U.S. Gold Corp is well-capitalized and has an extremely tight share structure with less than 20 million shares outstanding and trades on the NASDAQ, a major exchange, under the ticker symbol USAU. To learn more, go to usgoldcorp.gold. That's usgoldcorp.gold.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is May 8th, 2019. Well, if you've been watching China, paying attention, you know that President Trump has just said he's going to impose 25% tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. Maybe that's a good start, maybe not. Well, let's find out. First, though, as always, we invite you to be a part of the show and email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Our good friend, Jeff Ferry, chief economist of Coalition for a Prosperous America. You find him at prosperousamerica.com, is with us now. And Jeff, welcome back. So tariffs, you think this is going to actually come to pass, or is this Trump's final negotiating ploy at the table?
If I was a betting man, I'd be betting that on Friday we're going to have a new regime of 25% tariffs on $250 billion of Chinese imports.
Mm-hmm. So
if you wanted to import any of that cheap rubbish that they make in China, I would suggest you do it tomorrow, Thursday, because it might cost more on Friday.
So you better.
But then again, you can wait till next year, and we'll be making that stuff in the United States.
Yeah, and it'll be twice as much probably, but at least the money will stay here. Hey, so let that be.
Not twice as much.
Yeah, well,
it'll be 10% more. It'll be better quality. The money will go to support the U.S. economy.
Great. Hey, well, there's nothing wrong with that. So when you look at it, well, also before we get on, if you're buying from Amazon, you better buy now because everything on Amazon is Chinese. Go to Walmart, buy now, and buy a flat screen now because the price is probably going up, right?
Well, I mean, let's be serious now. You're generalizing a bit too much. China's $539 billion of imports last year is about 20% of our imports. So, whether it's a flat screen TV or anything else, sure, many of them are made in China, but just as many are made in Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia and other countries. So you can easily go to any of those stores and find an alternative which is not getting tariffed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, this will affect our economy in the long run, good. In the short run, some adjustments.
Hey, one thing that I do follow, we follow financial markets and commodities markets here. China right now is having a severe bout of their hog stocks of African swine flu. Yes, hog, swine, same thing. And they've had to kill off like a couple 100 million of their hogs. And there's only one country in the world that has a surplus of hogs. And you know what that country is, Jeff?
No, tell me.
The good old US of A. Otherwise, no one else has a surplus of hogs. And they've been buying kind of vigorously here. Hog prices, the futures of pork bellies are way, way up. They're going up higher. And that's another thing. If you want to save on a potential calamity, buy bacon and pork and throw it in a big freezer now because it's going up in price here, potentially substantially, because whatever the Chinese feel, they're going to have to buy the hogs because that's what people eat in China.
Right. Well, good. And, don't get me wrong. I'm in favor of trade with China as long as it's free and fair. And I'm certainly in favor of agricultural trade with China. They have 1 billion people who want to eat. Yeah. And I'm just concerned that we have a trade structure that allows this economy to prosper too.
Very true. And we haven't for a couple of decades now. Now that China's gotten so large, we're kind of fighting a rearguard action. Maybe it's too little, too late?
No, I don't. It's too late, but I think we're doing the right thing. We have to rebuild our economy, and tariffs on Chinese imports will divert production out of China, some to other countries in Asia, some back to the United States. And that's a step in the right direction.
And we're already seeing that. We're seeing that with the steel producers. U.S. Steel is putting $1 billion capital spending into their existing steel plants. And I just want to point something out. That is a triumph, not just of the tariffs, but also of the new tax law, which provides for bonus depreciation, meaning for every dollar you spend on CapEx as a company, you get to deduct that from your bottom line. You no longer have to depreciate it over its useful life of 5, 7, 10, or 15 years, whatever, with the exception of building structures. But any other type of plant expense, you get to write off, which is basically why a company like Amazon paid no taxes last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Providing that incentive for capital spending, capital investment is excellent. And U.S. Steel is investing, as you say, in Pennsylvania, in Illinois, I think in Indiana, in a number in a number of places, and that is very largely due to the 232 tariffs.
Yeah,
and that's the right thing to do because there's no justification for China producing 51% of the world's steel, none whatsoever.
Yeah, for certain. And we know what happens when we import Chinese steel oftentimes into American infrastructure projects. You don't believe it? Take a look at the Oakland Bay Bridge, the new span that was opened. The Chinese steel is falling apart. The suspender cables that hold the bridge up, all these things. So better to do it in America for sure, where we have maybe some quality control, although infrastructure projects are notorious for cost overruns and shoddy quality in construction. And you recently, just yesterday, you wrote an article, when Chinese networks spy on their users. I mean, China is all about spying on their users. Just picture, instead of Google, Facebook, Twitter spying on us and everybody else, Amazon, you name it, they're all spying. Instead, we have a company that's an avowed enemy of the United States, and they're spying on us as well. So this is a big problem, isn't it?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm an economist and I tend to be comfortable talking about economics, but you can't forget the global politics here and the geostrategy. China is the number 2 economy in the world. They've got a huge grudge against the West for what happened in the 19th century. They want to be a global superpower. They're using their economy to further that campaign. And that's why I wrote that article yesterday pointing out, look, China's networks are actually spying on the people who paid them to build those networks. And that's why we keep certain Chinese suppliers out of U.S. telecom networks. Mm-hmm. And we really need to have our allies do the same, and we need to have more U.S. network suppliers supplying networks, wireless 5G networks and other networks that we can trust and rely on.
Yeah, and you made a point, I guess, in your last article. We used to have several companies that made networking infrastructure, and they're pretty much gone now. We don't have those companies in place to build the network.
That's right. There's a lot of, that's, if you like, one of the weaknesses of capitalism, that we have these booms and busts and crashes and upheaval. And the telecom and networking companies in the 90s did great, grew dramatically, hired thousands of people, ran up billions of dollars of debt. Then we had the crash and what's sometimes called the nuclear winter after the year 2000, and they all went out of business. And I think we need to bring one of them back, because I think the United States, with its $20 trillion economy and everybody, I was going to say under 21, but really every age group, they're on the smartphone all day long. That's a lot of network traffic. So we need a U.S. company to be building those networks. I'm not talking about operating the networks. That's what AT&T and Verizon do, and that's fine. I'm talking about actually building the hardware, the devices that make the network work.
Hey, and I got to tell you, IBM sold off their PC division to Lenovo got over 10 years ago. And lo and behold, we found out a year or two ago that they had spy chips in all of their computers. Now, I'll tell you this. I don't have an anti-Chinese bent. I have lots of Chinese products in my home, my office, what I do here. But I never bought a Lenovo computer for exactly that reason. Not that I feel that they have anything to spy about on my desktop, but just that right out that they're going to spy. Now, your background, Jeff, CPA, right?
Right.
So when you look at the financial statement of a Chinese company, all right, the American companies and other European foreign companies, bad enough. But when you look at one of their financial statements, do you believe one number that's on there?
No, you can't believe any of it because they do not have the same audit processes and all that kind of stuff that we have.
Yeah.
So I do not invest in Chinese companies.
Yeah. And you want, whatever the accounting companies, the big four that are left, and they're all doing business there. But when the Chinese tell them to jump, they ask how high, right?
Right.
So
and this has been getting worse under President Xi. He's been reasserting the control of the Communist Party over the corporate sector. And this is one of the key differences. But, I'm old enough to remember the Soviet Union. They certainly had a lot of spies. And, some people think that the Russians still spy. But it's mostly a spy versus spy sort of game. They're looking for government secrets regarding nuclear weapons and all that. The Chinese have engaged not just in that. They've done that. But on top of that, they've engaged in wholesale IP theft of all of our industrial secrets. In other words, to sort of copy our entire industrial infrastructure in China illegally without paying the royalties and rebuild it and compete with us. And so it's actually much worse than the Soviet Union. And also what makes it worse is that, you have to admit they're pretty efficient at it. When they build a company that makes something, whether it's automobiles or paint or chemicals or cement, it turns out to be a reasonably successful company that can sell around the world, which was not what we saw at the Soviet Union. So it behooves us here in Washington to take account of that and think of American interests first.
Absolutely. I could not agree.
And I want to point out that this is not a pure Republican point of view. I was thrilled when Senator Chuck Schumer, who's New York senator, so he was my senator back when I lived in New York. He tweeted on Sunday, "Hang tough on China, Trump." So I think a small number, but a growing number of Democrats are also recognizing this is an important fight to fight.
And it's probably the last opportunity we had to actually fight this fight. And it was inevitable, and it's better that Trump brings it about on his terms. He understands the Asian mind, the Asian culture, the Chinese, what they're about. And, at some point there is going to be a rapprochement, but better to do it when it's at the most advantageous time for the country than to do it at China's reckoning, at their will. So, yeah, a lot of things going on here, a lot of issues that really need to be addressed that have just been ignored. I mean, even like Joe Biden. I mean, what did you think when he said, "Oh, there's no need to worry about China"? What, me worry about China? I mean, and this guy thinks he should be president.
You're absolutely right. I was very discouraged by those comments. I thought, for a guy who has working class roots and comes from Scranton, Pennsylvania, I thought it was an insult to the 2 million Americans who've lost their jobs because of Chinese competition in the last 20 years. And it could be more than 2 million, but whatever the number, the point is that he says China is not a competitive threat to the United States. And I'm just thinking, tell that to the people who've lost their jobs because now all that cheap junk that you can buy in Walmart and Target is made in China. And these people, men or women, have to turn around to their family and say, "I can't get a job. I'm going to have to go work at half the wage in a retail establishment," or something like that. I mean, I think Joe Biden is writing himself out of the contention for the presidency, but then I'm no political expert. So let's see.
Let's not get political, but just to say that, I'm not sure that he can be elected dog catcher. So we'll see about that. There's a lot of issues with that guy, but he certainly is compromised by China, right? China made a $1 billion investment in his late son's hedge fund. What was that about?
Yeah, these are very worrying. And, we've seen this pattern before. I mean, wherever you turn, China, ironically, it's supposed to be communist. There used to be an old joke when I was a kid that under capitalism, man exploits man. Well, the genius of communism is it's reversed that equation.
Yeah.
And so communism has a bunch of Communist Party officials exploiting everybody else, and they're millionaires, and they use their money to win influence in the United States. You probably saw a Chinese family paid $6 million to try and get their kid into some college or other. I mean, this kind of influence has to be exposed and resisted.
Yep. And there's only one that had the guts to do it. Hey, one thing I wanted to address with you, Jeff, you talk, if you have to talk to a liberal, they don't really care about facts, but we have the fact that there are over 400,000 new factory jobs that have returned to the United States since Trump became president, but that's part of the Obama economy?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, since Donald Trump took office, we've had a boom in manufacturing, better than what we saw before. Job creation on that level, 400,000 new manufacturing jobs. It's a great thing. We've seen a great manufacturing boom, and let's hope it can continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's we've got this recovery is really old, but this is not the Obama recovery here, Jeff. Right? I mean, let's be real here. You're an economist. Obama said these jobs were gone and never coming back.
Yeah. Yes, and I've been saying that to people who say, I hear that all the time. These jobs, manufacturing jobs, are not coming back. And I say, why not? Germany's got a higher percentage of folks, of workers in manufacturing than the U.S. does. Even Singapore does. And South Korea certainly does. And there's no reason why we can't have more manufacturing jobs. Now, when people say to me, well, service industry is growing, I say, well, that's fine. If the service industries are going to pay as well as manufacturing, that's absolutely fine. I'm not against service jobs, but the reality is that the vast majority of service jobs are in restaurants, bars, coffee shops, and hotels, and are paying far less than the jobs we had in this country 20 years ago.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's not even debatable, the point. It's just absurd. So when you look at this and you see what's happened, like nobody in their most optimistic thoughts ever thought that this could be done. And yet Trump has done it, but it's still the Obama recovery, right? Obama's recovery was hire more government workers and just let them sit around all day and do nothing and pay them. And that's good for the economy, right? But as we know, things don't really work that way.
Yeah, I don't hear that much about Obama, which is fine with me. I hear, what I'm interested in is seeing what the different candidates on the Democratic side are proposing. And so, when an Amy Klobuchar or one of the others talks about a big infrastructure program, I say, hey, that's a good idea. I mean, by the way, Donald Trump is also pushing for a big infrastructure program.
Yeah, they just won't do it.
So I'm a policy guy. I support the policies that I think make sense, and I want to see both parties support the policies that make sense.
Exactly. The policies really need to cross partisan aisles. They really are crucial to the country, and to think that we're just arguing over stuff, and then that half these people have been co-opted by foreign money, it's just really disheartening.
You're right. And we need, in both parties, we have too many people who are stuck in the rut of simple cliches like, there are too many Republicans who are too much pro-free trade and think low taxes will solve all problems, and they don't recognize the reality of trading in the international world. And on the Democratic side, as we said, there are people like Joe Biden who say things which are pretty much nonsense and make you wonder if it's money crossing hands that's determined those statements.
He's good at that.
But in both parties, there are people who are getting it. That's the optimistic thing is that, as you said, people thought Donald Trump was a nutcase and would never win the election. He won the election. He dared to do things that people said was impossible, stand up to China and say, we are going to bring back manufacturing jobs. And lo and behold, here we are in May 2019 with 400,000 more manufacturing jobs and more people on both parties saying to me quietly, he had a point. China really is a country we have to stand up to. And, maybe there is a lot more scope runway in manufacturing. I mean, look at the way the steel industry has rebuilt, and there's more yet to come.
Yeah. So, and like I said, the so-called recovery, it's 10 years old here, and it's getting long in tooth, and everybody keeps expecting it to falter. And, what's amazing is when you look at, forget about the employment numbers, the new claims for unemployment insurance are at 50-year lows. All right. That's the one stat they can't fake. As far as U1 unemployment at 3.6%, it's probably closer to 5%. But the other thing is there's 1.2 million more jobs available than unemployed people in the country. So at some point, workforce participation rate is going to increase. It's gone up a little bit so far. There's just people who aren't really having jobs. I don't know how they count Uber drivers in the unemployment stats or Airbnb hosts that make six figures. I'm not sure about that. But, the fact is, I think the numbers are a little bit deceptive. The side hustle, gig economy, maybe they're not as good jobs as we once had. But I talked to people in Las Vegas, in LA, making $200 to $500 a day on Uber and Lyft. So there's something to it there that obviously the statistics aren't capturing. And then you have local governments trying to put the kibosh on these growing sectors of the economy, totally moronic to protect the entrenched interest, right?
Yep. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Although I think the majority of people are not making a ton of money on Uber and Lyft. And I think I would not be buying those stocks, although I'm not such a smart investor. But, I think
I wouldn't have bought Google. I didn't buy Google. I didn't buy Amazon. I did buy a little Apple, but I got rid of it. But no, I totally agree with you. Anyway, Jeff, really appreciate you coming on. So we find your work. Again, tell us where we find it.
Right. Thank you. We're at prosperousamerica.org. We are a bipartisan coalition of manufacturers, labor unions, and agricultural groups fighting for better trade, rebuilding manufacturing, and rebuilding the income of the family farmer. So please check us out, read my articles, join us up where it's not much money to join the coalition, prosperousamerica.org.
All right, prosperousamerica.org. Hey, take a look at our site, Financial Survival Network, and sign up for our newsletter. Got one going out in the next day or so, promise. And Jeff, it's always a pleasure. Hey, if you're listening on a podcast or on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. It really helps us a lot when you do that. Helps get these ideas out, ideas like Jeff's. Jeff, really appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Thank you, Terry, for the opportunity. Take care.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.